Hai, semua ada yang dari luar dah. Oh hai Diana, from UKM. Nurul Nabila. Okay, hai. Selamat datang. Okay, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Saya ucapkan kepada speaker jemputan kita dan rakan projek dan para hadirin sekalian yang sudi meluangkan masa untuk menyertai talk yang bakal berlangsung sebentar lagi. Okay, kita bersyukur kerana dengan izinnya kita dapat bersama-sama bersua secara online untuk talk ini. Baiklah, sebelum saya memperkenalkan panel kita yang kelihatan cantik lagi bergaya pada hari ini, kita akan memperkenalkan bersama tentang forum bertemakan kesihatan yang bertajuk Mental Health Talk, Awareness and Necessary Intervention. Untuk maklumat semua, kita sedia maklum bahawa kesihatan mental merupakan tahap kesejahteraan psikologi dan bukanlah suatu perkara yang boleh dilihat dengan mata kasar. Namun, patutkah kita mengambil ringan terhadap perkara ini? Tambahan pula sekarang kita berada dalam pandemik COVID-19, kebanyakan orang sedang mengalami masalah terhadap kesihatan mental yang kadang-kadang mereka sendiri tidak menyedarinya. Oleh itu, mari sama-sama kita susuri topik ini dengan lebih mendalam bersama panel kita iaitu Cik Athirah binti Mohd Nasir. Beliau merupakan seorang gadis yang berusia 24 tahun, belajar di Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia UKM dalam kos Bachelor Degree in Social Science Psychology. Beliau juga adalah gadis pertama yang menjadi President of Psychology and Social Work Youth Club since 2005. Untuk pengetahuan semua, kelab ini adalah kelab program bersama yang menggabungkan kedua-dua psikologi dan sosial program kerja di bawah the Center of Research Psychology and Human Wellbeing (Athirah) at the Faculty of Social Science and Humanity FSSK di UKM. Okay. Kelab ini ditubuhkan pada 2005 dan diperintah oleh wanita sebagai presiden yang pertama dengan moto Unison Service and Investment. Kelab bertujuan untuk menyediakan platform utama dalam memperluaskan pengetahuan dalam dunia psikologi dan kerja sosial yang merangkumi pembelajaran di luar tradisional bilik darjah. Dapat dicapai melalui penyertaan sama ada sebagai jawatan kuasa ataupun sebagai peserta. Kelab ini juga berhasrat untuk memelihara anggotanya dengan kredibiliti yang tinggi dalam kepimpinan untuk diri sendiri dan juga seluruh komuniti dengan mengupayakan nilai-nilai kemanusiaan. Ahli dan komuniti kita menggalakkan untuk mendapat maklumat yang baik mengenai kepentingan integrasi antara kesejahteraan fizikal, mental yang baik untuk diri sendiri atau masyarakat untuk berkongsi ilmu pada hari ini. Okay, tanpa melengahkan lagi masa, kita menjemput Cik Athirah untuk menerangkan tentang mental health, mental illness and mental disorder, also about the statistic of this language.
Hai, Assalamualaikum. Dengar ke saya? Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Thank you. Jika saya berbicara dalam bahasa Inggeris, sebabnya I would like to accommodate those my friends coming from international. So I would like to continue on this talk in English, if that's possible. Alright, so first of all, I would like to extend gratitude to UMP, particularly Hidayah, Mohd, and the rest of the organizing team for this opportunity to collaborate with me and also Site Club. I think this is a very it's an opportunity that allows us to not only collaborate in terms of the club, but also allows visibility for ourselves and also to, most importantly, to raise awareness about this issue. And I'm beyond grateful and very, very happy that UMP has allowed for this conversation to be a part of our slot today. So thank you so much, Hidayah. I would like to present my screen on the slides. Siti. All right. Can you guys see my screen? Hidayah, can you see my screen?
Belum.
Yes.
Okay dah. Yes.
Okay. My apologies if the line is like unstable because my line is not really stable at the moment. So I apologize in advance for that. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, so Assalamualaikum and welcome everyone to this talk. It's a talk about general mental health and it's raising awareness and also the necessary interventions that I hope to be bringing up to you guys about, right? So my name is Athirah Nasir, thanks to Hidayah's introduction just now. So I'm currently the president of UPM. So I would like to discuss or share more to you guys more about mental health, general mental health, right? So upon starting, I would like to implore and urge everyone to, at any point of this talk, if let's say there's any point in the slides that you wish to know more about or it entices you to learn more about it, I would really, really urge you guys to go on Google, search and ask relevant people or people with credentials more about it. I would not want us to be blindly on any information that we hear, but I would like to stress that all the information that I have in the slides today are all evidence-based and they are facts. So, but if you need further information about it, you can definitely go search about it. Search on it lah, right? Okay, moving on. So, inshallah, throughout this talk for 1 hour and a half or so, I would like to cover a few subtopics that are, I think, it summarizes and encapsulates what mental health is all about. So, number one is the definition of mental health, illness and disorder, and then we'll move on to statistics and commonalities in Malaysia, and then we will go into the common mental disorders in Malaysia, and then we will have to look into signs and causes of depression, particularly, and then we will play a little mini game, I like to call it, with all of you, and it will be in the slot stigma in myths, and then last but not least, we'll have the prevention, intervention, and services slot. So yeah, so all these subtopics are what we're going to cover today, inshallah. I hope you guys bear with me, and I hope by the end of this talk you learn more, and you would definitely spread more, you impart the same knowledge that I have shared to you today to all the people that you are you care about. All right. So moving on. All right. So we will first look into definition of mental health, illness and disorders. I think ultimately, at the end of the day, we need to know more about definitions. We need to know what exactly are we looking at for us to really tell that, okay, that is a mental disorder, that is a mental illness, and that is the thing that is disrupting our psychological health and not other factors. So for that, I would like to share you guys more about the definitions, right? So number one is mental health. Okay, so you hear a lot about physical health, right? So mental health, according to WHO or the World Health Organization, it is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So if let's say there is anyone that you know, or even yourself, if you realize that there are some things that you have been doing well previously, but then due to certain circumstances you cannot function well, cannot function as you used to function. Really. So there is a possibility that your mental health is being disrupted. So we need to look more into that and make sure it's mental health instead of physical health. All right. So moving on, we'll go into mental illness. All right. So mental illness, according to American Psychological Association in the year 2018, it is a health condition involving changes in emotions, thinking, or behavior, or a combination of all those three, right? And this mental illness are associated with distress and or problems functioning in social, work, or family activities. So basically, I would say mental illness is like the bigger umbrella to mental disorders. Okay, let's say you have, let's say just now you mentioned that your mental health is being disrupted, right? So there is a possibility that that person has has a mental illness. Okay, possibility, right? Why? You look into, is there a change in emotion? Is there a change in thinking or behavior, either on you or on the people that you love? Okay, and most importantly, it disrupts your normal functioning with other people, especially well, or you cannot communicate with your spouses very well. So there's a possibility that you have mental illness, right? So moving on, we will go into mental disorders. Okay, so mental disorders, according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the fifth DSM, is actually a syndrome characterized by clinically significant disturbance in an individual's cognition, emotion, regulation, or behavior that reflects this dysfunction in the psychological, biological, or developmental processes underlying mental functioning. So if you look into previously the mental illness, right? So mental illness is more, I would say more general. Okay, so mental disorder is more specific. So if you have mental illness as a large umbrella, so mental disorder is more specific. Okay, so like stress, for example. Stress is a mental illness, but it's not a mental disorder. Why? Because according to the DSM, there is no specific characteristics to define stress. But other mental illnesses like depression, bipolar disorder, and anxiety disorder, those have specifically underlined characteristics that we need to, that a mentally ill patient needs to adhere to all those characteristics for them to be diagnosed with the mental disorder, right? So again, mental health, if there's a disruption, there's a possibility of having a mental illness. But mental illness, there's a lot of it. So mental disorder, particularly in specifics, in accordance with DSM, if you fulfill those criteria, there is a possibility that you have a mental disorder. Okay, so by the way, DSM is actually, I would say, a reference, the main reference for clinical psychologists and also psychiatrists to really look into the detailings of every symptoms for mental disorder. So you can't just say, okay, she has nervousness, therefore she has anxiety. There's no such thing like that. There's a very specific characteristics underlying the DSM for you guys to, for every clinical psychologist to look into. Yeah. All right. So I hope this encapsulates the understanding of the definition for all those three, and I understand better. So moving on. Okay, now I would love to share with you the statistics and commonalities in mental health we have in Malaysia right now. While I was preparing for this talk and I was researching on this statistic, and it alarmed me. And for someone who is not, I would say I was aware of this, but the fact that the numbers are very staggering and it's alarming. The numbers don't lie. They do statistics for a reason. So I would love to share with you the findings from this research. All right. So these statistics are basically from the National Health and Morbidity Survey from the year 2009. Right. So National Health Morbidity Survey is a national health survey whereby it's based on it is actually community-based data. Okay, when it's community-based data, means all the data that is embedded in this survey is coming from all of us. It's all respondents from Malaysia, and basically in this NHMS is a summary of those non-communicable disease or NCD. NCD or non-communicable disease are those that are not the disease are not transmissible. For example, what is it? Cardiovascular diseases. Then we have um, cancers. So all those diseases are non-communicable diseases in comparison to other diseases, right? So this is the statistic that I found. This was based in the year 2019, right? So depression among Malaysian adults is 2.3%. That's about 500,000 people. And I looked online, and that the population of Malaysia in the year 2009 is about approximately 32.6 million. So 2.3% of that is almost, it's around 700 million. Yeah, 700. Yes, okay. So basically, that is 750,000, which is nearly a million. And that could be any one of us or any one of us right now in this meeting. So that is something that is very worrying. Okay, and then I would love to look into the states, the breakdown of the states, which whereby high prevalence of depression were found in Wilayah Persekutuan Putrajaya with 5.4%, Negeri Sembilan at 5%, Perlis at 4.3%, Sabah at 4%, and Malacca at 3.8%. So if you are resided in this state, I would love for you to look into look into yourself, look into your closest family and friends, look into whether there are people. I wouldn't say in other states there's some prevalence of that. There are, so that these states are much higher in numbers comparison to other states, right? Moving on, we'll look into the social demographic groups. So in terms of gender, depression has higher number found in females, which is around 2.6%. I will show you a further research on that, on why, on like research why females are found more prevalent for having depression than males, right? And then rural people, or I would say people who are living in rural areas, has higher rate of depression, which is like around 3.6%. So times that by our 32.6 million population just now. So apparently people in the rural areas are more inclined towards depression than those in the urban areas. And then those who are, in terms of marital status, those who are single, you are 3.2% at higher risk of depression compared to those who are married and also divorced, right? And then for household income, it is found that by 40 people, those who are earning in the bottom 40%, is more inclined towards depression, which is around 2.7%. Okay, so and also mention here that consult your doctor or your general physician if you have any of the symptoms: depressed mood, loss of interest, reduced concentration, reduced self-esteem, ideations of self-harm, suicide, disturbed sleep and appetite. You need to get further. Um, you need to consult your doctor and have your health checked out. Right, but I will discuss more on the symptoms later on. Moving on, we'll go into mental health in children or youth suicide. Uh, in the last few years, there is a rise in this term called youth suicide. So in the year 2019, 424,000 children were found to have mental health problems in Malaysia. And in the year 2019, there's approximately 23.7% of children in the population. So if you times that by this, you can like 5.6% of children are having mental health problems, right? And then, okay, so children who are having mental health problems, they have they share these four similar characteristics. Number one, they are from the rural population, which is 8.8%, and most of them are girls. And approximately 10 to 15 years old, they are more their mental health problems are found in children aged 10 to 15 years compared to other ages. And then they are, of course, coming from the difficulty in household income. So it definitely coincides with the data that I shared with you earlier. So this is very worrying, and I hope if we have nieces and nephews or cousins or our own children, in fact, I hope we will look into this and be more aware. I wouldn't say suspect them, but we would be more aware of this. Okay, because there is that's a trend going on with children nowadays with depression or mental illness, right? Okay, next, so what contributes to the mental health problems? So these are the ingredients of mental health problems by domains. So approximately all these four are contributing towards mental health problems in children, right? So at the bottom, 2.3% is the hyperactive problem, 8.3% is emotional problem, and 50.9% is conduct problem, and 42.9% is peer problem. So definitely we have to look into our kids, especially if they are not at home all the time, if they're playing online games all the time, they're spending more of their time with their friends in comparison to their family members. There's a huge possibility that mental health, that they will be suffering from mental health when it comes to when they're out and about with themselves a lot. Okay, so moving on. Also interesting data that I found, I just looked it up a bit. So among the sick, right? Any basically the non-clinical communicable diseases that I mentioned earlier. So Siti has 1.5% is more than half of our population at the end of 2019 sought care or advice on certain disease. So only 7.5%, there's 100%. About 100%, maybe 2.8% are self-medicated. So we took medications without proper advice or from healthcare practitioners. Okay, and then 16.4% sought advice from family and friends. So if you have the same disease as I do, I probably cure or treat it the same way as you do. So apparently that is the mindset that few of us have. And also, unfortunately, 11.3% of us sought advice from media. Okay, so you Google and then you do the screening test and whatnot, and I have to eat this if I have this illnesses. So I would really hope that all of this breakdown of people seeking help for diseases would go to the first option, which is seeking care or advice from healthcare practitioners. They are those in the field, guys. We need to seek help from them, not self-medicated, not from friends, not which is from the healthcare practitioners, right? Okay, so before we move on to the next slot, which is the common mental disorders as well as signs and causes, I would love to pass the floor back to Hidayah before we move on to the next slot. Thank you very much.
Alright, okay, thank you. Okay, Athirah dah terangkan tentang mental health, mental illness and mental disorder. Okay, kita dapat mengambil iktibar daripada semua-semua maksud itu sebab semua tak sama kan untuk masing-masing part. Okay, next sebab berkaitan dengan statistik dia kebanyakannya yang mengalami mental health ni adalah wanita, so kita sebagai wanita kena alert tentang benda ni. And then okay, next session is we want to talk about the common mental disorder in Malaysia and the sign of also the cause of this mental health. Okay, so Athirah.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Aya. I'll continue sharing my screen again. Okay. All right. Okay. So we shall move on to the next slides. All right. Okay. So I would like to dive into more on the common mental disorders in Malaysia. This was based on research that I found. It was conducted in the year 2012, right? Okay, so this research conducted by Krishna Swami et al. Was conducted based on 3,666 respondents in Malaysia, and the response rate was around 85%, right? So, oh, by the way, I do include the reference and citations for the sources that I took. So if you guys would love to find out more about it, you can go directly to all these links. So to find out more about it. Okay. So, all right. So one of the common mental disorders, or CMD, found in Malaysia in the year 2012 upon their research. The first one is generalized anxiety disorder. So apparently, of all mental illnesses, generalized anxiety disorder is one of the most common mental disorders. So it is being defined as excessive anxiety and worry, apprehensive expectation occurring more days than not for at least 6 months about a number of events or activities such as work or school performance. Right. So, and then we have depression. Depression is fairly common. So if you look into the DSM, or the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Health, there is a mental disorder. Depression is defined as feelings of sadness and or a loss of interest in activities that you once enjoyed. So I will elaborate more about depression in the signs and symptoms later on, but as a basic of it is this. So GAD, or generalized anxiety disorder, or commonly known as anxiety, is defined as such, and also depression is also as such. Okay, and then one of the 4 common mental disorders aside from GAD and depression is also found to be phobia. So phobia is defined as the fear, anxiety, or avoidance is persistent, typically lasting for 6 months or more. Okay, so there are multiple phobias that we have. There's like phobias for like deep seas, and then like reptiles and other things. So these are not made up mental disorders. These are real, especially if it adheres to the DSM, the characteristics in the DSM, right? And then one of the 4 are also inclusive of panic disorder. It is abrupt surges of intense fear or discomfort that peak within minutes. So you see, or you feel like someone has disrupt or sudden surges of fear or discomfort, there is a possibility that that person has panic disorder. Okay, so more characteristics you can look into the DSM-5, right? Okay, so further into this research, it is found that the factors of CMD in Malaysia are based on these factors. Okay, so remember just now when I showed you statistics that female was 2.6% and male was 2.2%, right? The prevalence of depression. So in this research, it was further highlighted. So it is true that In females, the p-value, or it is stated, okay, whenever you see p-value, right? So if it's less than 0.05, it is statistically significant. So it is showing that the correlation of being female and having CMD is statistically significant, meaning there is a correlation. So if it's a p-value, if you see any p-value, it's more than 0.05, that means it's not statistically significant. Right, so in females, it's 0.01. That is very, very highly significant. And then we have those who are divorced. So those who are divorced are more likely to have CMD, the four factors, the four common mental disorders that I shared with you earlier, and the p-value is less than 0.05. Also statistically significant. And next, we go into difficulties at workplaces. So the p-value is again less than 0.01. So if nowadays you have difficulties at workplaces, or even in any organization that you're in right now, there is a possibility that you are facing with CMG because of the I would say constant stress that you're facing at workplaces. So yeah, and then we also have unsolvable financial problems. So if you have parents or siblings or any of your neighbors, any of your friends, that they have financial problems, there is a possibility that they are also facing CMG, which whereby the p-value is at less than 0.01. So yeah, so if you look into these factors, right, all these factors are social based, based on social interactions. There are other factors of mental illnesses that are biological based. Okay, so this one is more focusing on the social interaction or the core social circles. So last but not least, one of the factors contributing towards common mental disorders in Malaysia was serious problems with friends and neighbors. So, like I mentioned earlier, this goes back to the statistics in children just now, whereby 40%, the domain is in peer problems. So, this relates to this finding as well. So, if um, these past few days or these past few weeks you have been having issues with any of your closest friends or your neighbors or any of your other friends, your spouses and things like that, there is a possibility that you are facing something because the p-value is at less than 0.01. So yeah, all these are social factors concerning CMT. Right, so moving on, we shall look into the signs and symptoms. So we've been mentioned just now about GED, anxiety, and depression, and then we have about phobia and whatnot. So these signs and symptoms will focus more towards depression. I think that's more prevalent, but if you want to know more about the signs and symptoms of other CMT that I mentioned earlier, please do so by going to the DSM or going to relevant medical websites about mental health and do further research about it. Okay, so so this will be looking into GAD or generalized anxiety disorder. So this is based on DSM, the 5th edition. So okay, I think let's do this like a checklist for every one of us. So you can take down your note in a pen, I mean on a paper, or even do it on your phone note. Number one, have you been feeling restless these past few days? And then, do you have difficulty in sleeping? Restlessness is more like you can't be calm all the time. Um, you're constantly thinking about something. Your mind has not stopped working, and you're fidgeting all the time. And you have difficulty in sleeping, lesser time in sleeping, or more time in sleeping. Irritability. Anything anyone says to you irritates you at most. So there's a possibility of that. Excessive anxiety and worry. So this is I would say the most prevalent one, the most prominent one. When something is, I wouldn't say minute. I would say for most people it's seen as a very um, but then you take it as something huge because it matters to you and it there's possibility that there's one of the symptoms of GAD. And then there's fatigue. Fatigue means it's intense tiredness. Okay, so fatigue is also one of the signs of GAD. And then there's also impaired concentration. Impaired concentration is, for example, right now you're listening to me and you're finding yourself to lose focus. Can't really digest everything that I'm trying to impart on you, or even in class. I think this is very common in open distance learning, ODL. You find it really difficult to concentrate, or even someone like giving you a lecture in front of you physically, find it very hard to concentrate, or even doing something at work. Find it very difficult to like focus your direction and your mind on one thing. And then there's also increased muscle aches or soreness. So this is more on let's say physical signs of GAD. So yeah, so these are the symptoms or signs of GAD. So if any one of you do, if you take any of those boxes, or any one of your loved ones, you believe, you suspect that they have a few of the symptoms, please consult professional help. Right? Do not wait further. I would not suggest you to wait further. Um, okay, so next we shall move on to the signs of depression. So just now we were looking into the GAD or anxiety. So this one, we're highlighting more about signs of depression, right? So again, take out your pencil, and then you can include your notes on your phone, right? So number one, fatigue, similar to just now. So it's intense tiredness. You're not doing anything. You're just lying down on your bed and you feel so tired. And then number two, feeling of guilt, worthlessness, and helplessness. So in most cases of depression, the most prominent symptom is that they're constantly feeling worthless. Uh, uh, Worthless is most common one. They do not find that anything that they're doing is contributing towards anyone, either to their spouse, their family members, their group mates, society in general. They don't feel like they're contributing at all. Okay, and the third one is trouble concentrating, similar to GED, remembering details and making decisions. Anything as like day-to-day basis, um, looking into it is difficult for them. Okay, and number four is insomnia, difficulty in sleeping. Early morning wakefulness. You would find yourself waking up very early in the morning, or sleeping a little too much, maybe like exceeding evening, or maybe you wake up even at night. When you sleep at night, you wake up at night. So there is a possibility of that. Next, this is more on physical pain, physical symptoms. So there's aches, pains, headaches, or cramps that won't go away. So makan lang Panadol, active fast or anything, it just doesn't go away. It's there, and it prolongs for quite a few weeks or months even, right? So crankiness. They would associate crankiness with, I would say, ladies when we're having our PMS, our time of the month. We're a little bit more cranky, but in this case, it is not only during once a month. It is constant. So if you find yourself being cranky for only once a month, there's a possibility that it's not depression. Okay, so we would look more into it and decide that it's not depression, not because it's time of the month and that there's hormonal imbalance and things like that. And then restlessness, similar to GAD, you're constantly fidgeting, you're constantly feeling worrying about a lot of things, basically. Loss of interest in things once pleasurable. So this is also, I would say, the second most prominent symptoms in depression, in depressed people. Imagine doing something that you once loved. Either, let's say, for example, a hobby that you once loved, an art. You like drawing, or you like dancing or things like that. When depression hits you, all those things that you find very rewarding, very pleasurable, are no longer giving you the same same sense of pleasure anymore. So, okay, so, and then we will have those who are overeating or appetite loss. So it's either or. Either you're overeating or there's a chance that you have lost a lot of weight. Also a sign contributing to depression. And then we'll look into suicidal thoughts. This one I would say is at the last, I wouldn't say last, but it's definitely a moment of alarm for most people, because once there is that thought going into your head that you do not want to live longer, then I mean any of these symptoms are serious. If you exhibit any of the symptoms are serious, but once it boils down to suicidal thoughts, that's when you know immediate help must be must be looked into. Okay. Um, yeah. And then there's fatigue, similar to GAD, feeling guilt, worthlessness, and helplessness. Same, like they feel like they're not contributing towards the society. Anything that they do is not giving any benefit to anyone. Trouble concentrating, similar. Wait, did I? Okay, sorry, I think I repeated the point. Okay, and then last but not least, digestive problems that do not get better even with treatment. Okay, so we're not talking about, I mean, I know every time iftar nowadays, we constantly have digestive problem because we're eating a lot. I think it's pretty normal because we're hungry. But we would have like this discomfort that we're feeling around like 30 minutes to an hour after iftar, you would feel that. But this one is constant. It's not during um, during at night sahaj or during iftar time. This one prolongs. This one it's extensive. So even if you eating medication, it doesn't seem to go away. So and then also persistent, sad, anxious, or empty feelings. This is also, I would say, top three most prominent signs of depression. Um, Constantly feeling sad. Anything that you do, anything that people do to you, that trying to make you feel happy, trying to make you feel to get you out there, you're constantly in your own little bubble of being completely um, shutting yourself out, really, feeling really sad, anxious, or these empty feelings. Okay, so those are the signs that we have looked into, mostly on GAD and depression. So I would like to address one thing very important. We will always see nowadays that whenever you see someone with they're just facing a lot of things in life, and then you would say that they're stressed, but then you would say that, oh, I'm depressed. Okay, I'm not invalidating your whatever you're feeling. I'm not. In fact, I want all of us to be more aware of the things, the signs that we're exhibiting, to be so sure that we are not what it is. So do not confuse stress with depression. Do not confuse nervousness or anxiety. Nervousness is a part of anxiety, but it's not the only signs to exhibit. So there's a lot. Remember the signs that the list that I showed you. So all those are they need you need to adhere to all those checklists for you to be considered GAD, having GAD or depressed. And then also a lot of people say nowadays that they would confuse perfectionism with OCD. I would love for you to look into OCD, the DSM characteristics, but my point is right now, instead of addressing people or labeling people based on one or two.
Okay, maybe Cik Athirah ada masalah internet. Sekejap. Kita tunggu dia join balik.
Hello.
Okay, hello.
Ya.
Hi. Lama dah ke? Or has it been like a few minutes? Did I lose connection? Is it okay? All right, cool. Okay, sorry guys. Okay, so we were talking about depression just now in the signs. So like I said, do not mistaken perfectionism with OCD. Do not mistaken nervousness with anxiety. Do not mistaken stress for depression. Instead, look into those symptoms and have further research on it. Seek professional help, because I kid you not, it is not for someone who has depression. Hearing someone else say depression, oh, they're depressed and things like that, that breaks their heart even more, because it hurts. Mental illness hurt. Mental illness is hurt. Okay, so having other people taking it so lightly to label it just like that, it is not. It is not relieving to hear. So let's be more sensitive and more aware of the signs, and instead of labeling people as we wish, we would look more about it, look more into it. Okay. Okay, so now we'll go into the causes. So we have seen the symptoms. So we want to know what exactly are the contributing factors. So just now we were looking into the CMD, factors of CMD, right? So those are more of the social factors surrounding depression. So this one is more on biological causes or factors. So, okay, so again, I'm focusing more on depression. But if you would love to know more about other causes for other CMDs, please do so. Okay, so for depression, one of it is genetics. One of the leading causes is genetics. Definitely, you are not born with mental illness or depression for that matter, but if you have a history or your family members or your relatives used to have or dealt with mental illnesses, there is a possibility that you might have that in your genes. So if you have that in your genetics and you are surrounded with a negative social circle, there is a possibility for you to be more inclined towards mental illnesses or depression. So I would love to reference this documentary that I watched on Netflix. If any one of you are love watching Netflix, this is one of the documentaries that I love watching. It was about Cyntoia Denise Brown. I don't know if you guys heard of her. So she had a very unfortunate, I would say, background, whereby her grandmother had failed attempts of suicide. Her mother is an addict, also suffering depression. So these, I would say, layers of generational mental illness that has been surrounding in her family lead her to have. She had her mom when she was carrying her for 9 months. I would say, what do you call that? She was an alcoholic. So as we know by logic, any pregnant mom out there should not be consuming alcohol. So that, and also adding on to the genetics of depression in her family, led her to have a very unstable mental health condition. However, this is very inspiring. I would urge you guys to watch this documentary, because Cyntoia Denise Brown turned her life around upon going into prison for, I think, years. Is it 35 years or so? She even graduated college in prison. And then coming out from prison, she wrote books, she wrote her autobiography, and she raised awareness about the condition that she was in. enduring all those years. So I would say that genetics do play a huge role in causing depression, but how your life, how you how you place your basically how you turn your life around defines it even more. So it's unfortunate to have such genetics to be heavily imposed in your life, but what you do about it really defines it even more. So, and then there's also brain chemistry imbalance. So you would say that mental illness, just because you can't see it, okay, you can't see mental, okay, you can't like, but you're walking around, you see people with a broken bone, right? So it's visible, right? It's physical illness and you can see it. So, oh, she has a broken bone. But mental illness is not something that you can see. You cannot see it. So it is underlying biological effects in your brain. So if you learn more about it, I would not touch more about it, but I would love to address a few things. There is neurotransmitters in our bodies that helps us to accommodate day-to-day basis, help us to um, realizing, oh, there's pain, oh, I'm feeling pleasure, or I'm feeling sad, and all the things are basically from our nervous system. And then the neurotransmitters are the the, the causing and not causing, like they are the little soldiers that help us to feel what we feel. Okay, so those with depression have this neurotransmitters, especially dopamine. So dopamine is responsible to you for you to feel pleasure. So those with depression, their dopamine level decreased. And then also, if there is too much dopamine in your body, there is possibility of schizophrenia. So neurotransmitters, as little as tiny as they are accumulation of those neurotransmitters definitely contribute towards you feeling or having mental disruption in your mental health or having a mental illness. Okay, so do not disregard the things that we don't see as something that is not there, because it is there and it's very prevailing and it's very prominent. And then next we have poor nutrition. So poor nutrition, all those greasy foods, carbonated drinks, all those things, they are okay. Why? I would not go further into detail, but like I mentioned, all those neurotransmitters in your brain and other functioning in your brain, in your body requires certain, I would say, like they need certain, basically they need to rejuvenate or revive their like cells, right? Cell bodies. So if you're eating things that are not contributing towards the regeneration of your cell bodies, you are literally putting yourself into having uh, negative sort of basically having a bad um, physical health in general. So that leads to mental health, because at the end of the day, our body works together as a unit. So if one system is disrupted, the other can be affected as well. Okay, and then last but not least is physical health issue. So similar to poor nutrition, I think it starts from poor nutrition. If you eat well, you definitely have more energy, you can function well, you have more attention, and then you can focus better. So all these things are very much interrelated. Also, there's substance abuse. So in the case of Centoya Denise Brown that I mentioned earlier, her mother was an alcoholic while she was pregnant with Centoya. Imagine, I can't remember how many bottles that she drank, but she would drink at least 3 bottles of beer every day when her mom was having Centoya. So that indicates in her one of the hearings, I mentioned that Centoya had the mental capacity of a young child. Basically, she did not have the mental capacity of a normal adult. And then we have stress. So over stress definitely contributes to depression, and then traumatic events. So traumatic events can be something like whether it's a loss of your loved ones, or you are a victim of rape, for example, sexual assault, or any traumatic events. And chronic illnesses also contributes to its suppression. Why? Because looking into patients of cancer patients, um, surviving cancer itself is difficult, and the after effect of that leads towards you having you're not like when you hear that you have cancer, you would feel hopeless, like there's nothing to do, there's nothing that you can do about it, so worthlessness, right? So that would contribute towards depression. So yeah, okay, so all those are the causes of depression, looking into aside from the social factors that we looked into earlier. So these, on the other hand, is complications. So complications more on basically if one of us, I mean, if any of us have the symptoms that we exhibit in the earlier. So if you have any of these complications, it may worsen your mental illness, or it gives a sense of alarm or alertness. Okay, so number one, if you are constantly unhappy in your life, there is a possibility that it will lead to you having to not being function normally because you're not happy anymore, right? And then second is social isolation. You're constantly feeling alone or feeling isolated from everyone around you. Constantly isolating yourself from people, you have tendency to have depression. Because at the end of the day, we are in need of other people. We are social animals by nature. We need other people. We need treatment, we need just functioning normally as well as work and things like that. And then poverty and homelessness. So this one coincides with the statistic we showed earlier, which is the P40. The P40 are not homeless people, not addressing that. I'm saying that the financial status of a mentally ill patient definitely contributes towards depression. Okay, I think that's pretty logical because if you have money, you are you're easily accessible to treatments. In comparison to those who are not uh, financially viable, right? And then we have weakened immune system. So these again goes back into your poor nutrition. So if you're eating unhealthy foods, it does not contribute towards your biological processes. So when that happens, your little soldiers cannot function well. Right? So in other words, the immune system is sort of weakened, and that would lead to that's a possibility of that leading to depression. Okay, and also medical conditions, like I said just now about whether you have medical illnesses. So these are complications that would worsen your mental illness if it's not being addressed and treated as soon as possible. Okay, so before moving on into our mini game, I would love to hand it over back to Daya to summarize a little bit on things that we talked about earlier. And yeah, Daya.
Okay. Okay, sekarang kita nak masuk game slot. Game slot ni kita minta semua peserta boleh tulis dekat checkbox sama ada pernyataan yang akan disampaikan ini true or false. Semua boleh tulis di checkbox, and nanti Cik Athirah akan terangkan sama ada jawapan itu true or false. Okay, kita boleh start, boleh share screen kan?
Boleh. Nampak ke Daya? Can you see the screen? Okay. All right. So this we're moving into our next slot, which is our mini game. So I want it to be more interactive. So I was hoping that you guys would um, share your share your ideas about what are the stigmas of myths surrounding mental health, right? Okay, so every statement that I will be reading, I think Daya will be reading the statement, right? Daya?
Boleh.
Okay, so Daya will be reading the statement, and then I will, once, I think around 5 to 8 seconds, we will discuss a little bit more on why it's true or why is it false. All right?
Okay, for the first, mental health problem are uncommon. Okay, do you think this is false or true? So you can check on the chat box. Okay, Cik Tira kebanyakan cakap false. Okay, so Cik Tira boleh terangkan.
All right, so thank you, Diane. So I think thank you for your responses. Yes, it is false. Mental health problems are. No, sorry, it's yeah, it is false. Okay, because mental health problems are in fact very common. Okay, I would like to read statistics from the CDC or Centers for Disease Control Prevention. More than 50% will be diagnosed with mental illness or disorder at some point in their life. And 1 in 5 Americans will experience a mental illness in a given year. 1 in 5 children, either currently or at some point during their life, had seriously debilitating mental illness. And 1 in 25 Americans lives with a serious mental illness such as schizophrenia, bipolar, and major depression. So yes, it is fairly common, especially now and during pandemic ever since the MPO commenced last year in March. There are there's a peak in mental health problems. Looking into befrienders, like they receive a lot of calls concerning mental health. So it is not uncommon; it is fairly common. Okay, so next one.
Okay, then the second is people with mental health condition cannot work. Is true or false? False. Kebanyakan cakap false.
Yes, it is false. Okay, so people with mental health conditions. Okay, I think I would like to show you this statistics that I found. This is actually from Medical News Today. Okay, so okay, so look at this study. In 2014, employment rates decreased with increasing mental illness severity. However, 54.5% of individuals with severe conditions were employed. They were still employed, they are still working, compared with 75.9% of people without mental illness, and 68.8% of people with mild mental illness, and 62.7% of people with moderate mental illness. So it is not that, yes, it's true that they cannot function normally as we all are, but that doesn't mean that um, they cannot be given responsibilities to do work. They can, but it is important that the social surrounding that they are in is positive and healthy for them to work. Because, like I mentioned earlier, problems with friends and coworkers are contributing factors towards mental illnesses. So if you are giving yourself a hard time, if you're giving these people a hard time, they might not be able to function normally at work. So they can work. Looking at the statistics just now, they can work. They can function normally. They can be given responsibilities. But we all surrounding them, we must make sure that the environment is positive. So I think I would like to address something really quickly. If you are someone being in a position of power in any organization, whether at home, whether a society or association, anything, I would really, really urge for you to create a very positive environment, working environment for your members, because ultimately we are all working towards the same goal. And if you are, I always tell this to my team, because none of us are being paid for what we're doing in our club. It's like none of us are being paid. We're doing it merely for passion. We're doing it merely because we want to learn more about leadership and about the content itself. So it is very important to encourage your team and create a very safe and harmonious environment for them to work. Because if you're constantly pressuring them to do something that they're not being paid of, that they're not being paid for, they will not have the motivation to work anymore. So I would urge those of you out there who are at a position of power at work or in any organization, please be mindful of your team, of your teammates, of your coworkers. Create a safe and positive environment for them to continue to flourish and ultimately create a much more productive working space for everyone. And then at the end of the day, you're going to get a more, I would say, your company's productivity will increase. Okay, so yeah. Next.
Okay, next is the mental health problem are signs of weakness. Is true or false? False. Mostly answer is false.
All right. Thank you, Hidayah. Okay, so this is one of the most, I think, uh, people with mental illnesses, when they hear it, they will feel so discouraged that they are so weak. That's why they are facing all these mental illness. Mental illness are like physical illnesses. Okay, I cannot address this enough because it is illness as well. It's just because you cannot see it doesn't mean it's not there. But it is illness like other physical illness. You need medication for it, and you cannot choose to be sick. Similar to um, flu or diabetes, you do not choose for it, right? It's lifestyle and things like that. So it doesn't mean that you're weak that you have diabetes, right? So similar to mental illnesses, it's not a sign of weakness. In fact, those dealing with mental illnesses, once they have recovered, they have, their chances of surviving and their survival story are very inspiring to a point that it is considered as true strength, because there's a lot of things going on into recovery. We'll go into it later for treatments, but just to address that, in treatments, you need the willingness of the patient to want to get help too. Okay, so imagine taking yourself out of feeling worthlessness. All those symptoms that I've addressed earlier. It is not something you bukan pilih nak rasa tu. Okay, I'm like, okay, Monday I want to feel worthless. Tuesday I want to feel healthy and happy. Wednesday I'm going to feel agitated. You do not choose those symptoms. They happen and occur to you unknowingly. Okay, so basically, it is not a sign of weakness. Okay, and having to, I think this is very common among people with depression. They find it difficult to even get out of bed. So some people say, "Abang je lah." It's not easy as that, because it's something that is going inside of them, and they need support for that. So it is not. It is very difficult for someone to be in that state for quite a prolonged time, to be just told to just get out of it, just snap out of it, and just get your sense together. It's not as easy as that because it's much more complicated than that. So please do not address that people with mental illnesses are weak, because they are not. Okay, it happens more inside than none of us would ever know and comprehend. Okay. Next.
Okay. Next is depression is just a part of the aging process. Is true or false? Okay. Mostly answer is false. So false.
All right. Thank you, Daya. Okay, so this is also one of the stigmas that I found when I was researching for the topic. Depression is just a part of the aging process. No. Why? Because okay, I would love to share with you this research that was being done by the Harvard Institute. It's called the Adult Development Study. So in this, you can actually further further look into it later on. But basically, what they do is this is a longitudinal study. So to all psychology students out there, if you want to know what is a longitudinal study, so this is a perfect example of longitudinal study. So it is being carried out for more than 60 years, if I'm not mistaken. So what they do is they track down all these gentlemen from the regression, what is it, the regression period or something. The Great Depression, yeah, it was the Great Depression era at the time. So they followed this gentleman into their lives, leading after that the Great Depression, and they want to know what constitutes happiness for people at the end of their lives. So at the end of the study, they found out that the people, men or the elderlies, who have positive and harmonious social circle are less likely to develop depression than those who are constantly in isolation, who are lonely, who do not have a positive social circles. So basically, what it means is that if you want to be happy, one of the contributing factors is you need to have a positive social circle. And if you're lacking in that sense, you will have a possibility of depression, because this longitudinal study proves it. I wouldn't say like it proves throughout time, but it definitely gives a certain justification to this statement. So, not everyone will go through depression when you're old, because ultimately, if you let your life, you can look into this Erickson's theory. If you let your life being very productive, you have looked into, you have contributed to a lot of people in your life, there is a possibility that you will feel content. You will feel contented at the end of your life. So yeah. Next.
Okay. The last is a mental health problem are permanent. Is true or false? False.
It's false. Okay, thank you, Dana. I just realized the answer to all these questions are false. I forgot to twist the tone of the question, but yes, this is a false statement. Mental health problems are not permanent. Okay, similar to I can't stress this enough. It's similar to physical illnesses like cancer. Like if you diagnose cancer at earliest stage, there is a huge possibility that you will recover from cancer. You'll be cancer free. So similar to that, mental health problems, if you're diagnosed at early period of your diagnosis, there's a huge possibility that you will recover from it. But then again, we'll look into the treatments. There is other factors contributing to its recovery. But yeah, mental health problems are not permanent. Okay, as long as you seek the right help and you have the right drive and you have the right medical interventions, you definitely have more inclination to be better. Okay, so it's not like once you are depressed, you'll be depressed forever. No, there's no such thing as that. As long as you're willing to seek help and want to be helped and have the right mindset and have the right support, there is a huge possibility that you will recover. So yeah, this statement is false. Next.
Okay, for the last is the statement people with schizophrenia have a split personality. It's true or false? Okay, false.
I feel like it's a given. I feel like all the answers to today's questions are false because I forgot to twist the question. But yes, thank you so much, Daya. People with schizophrenia do not. I mean, they are not. They do not have split personality. Okay. I would like to show you this article. It's in. Okay, so this is a myth, obviously. So schizophrenia means splitting of the mind, which might explain the misconception. However, okay, according to WHO, schizophrenia is characterized by distortions in thinking, perception, emotion, language, sense of self, and behavior. These distortions include hallucination and delusions. However, it is not the same as dissociative identity disorder, which used to be called multiple personality disorder. So, in this case, I don't know how to address this guy because in this movie Split, if you guys watch, he has multiple personality. I think 21 personalities, if I'm not mistaken. So he is not schizophrenic. He has dissociative. What was it? With dissociative and identity disorder (DID). Okay, so it's different. Okay, so this is something that I do not have any credentials to talk about it either. But if you are interested to know more about it, you can definitely go look into it in DSM and ask relevant professionals to look more into it, basically. Okay, but this just for this question's sake, it's not the same. Okay, next.
Okay, statement all people with a mental illness are violent. It's true or false? False. Also false.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Dara. So yes, this seventh statement or stigma is actually false. All people with mental illness are not violent. In fact, studies found that they are victims of violence. That's very opposite, right? So apparently, people find it how do you say? These people are more inclined towards being victims of violence because I think they're more like vulnerable. People would associate them with vulnerability and that they cannot do anything in turn. Anything that you say will not provoke them or things like that. So yeah, opposite is that they are victims of violence instead of them being violent. Okay, so you can look into the medical news today for further elaboration of that. Next.
Okay, the having a mental illness means you are crazy. It's true or false? False. Yes, false.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Daria. Okay, I think this is something most of us. I think one of the reasons why people have stigmas around having or seeking treatments for mental illnesses is because they are scared to be called or labeled crazy. Because once you go into clinical psychology or psychiatrist, people think, oh, it's like, are you crazy? That's why you're seeking help from that source. But it is fairly untrue. Okay, even right now, being called crazy is actually a very, I would say, is a very distasteful way of, and very insensitive way of viewing someone. Okay, you can, even mental retardation are no longer being used right now. People call it intellectual disability. Okay, and called mental illness instead of people calling you crazy. Okay, mental illness is not crazy, like I mentioned just now, and through all those symptoms, right? They are symptoms of everyday feelings, everyday emotions that we have. It's just that it's being prolonged in such a manner, and it has sort of continuation and association with other symptoms as well. So that is why they have mental illness, but they are not crazy. And this is a proof from the previous statement that we had was the work, right? I mean, people who are called crazy, they do not work. They cannot work. They cannot function normally, right? But people who have mental illnesses, they can perform day-to-day basis function. They can. It's just that it's difficult, and if people in their social circles are giving them a hard time, then you are contributing towards them having much aggravated mental illnesses effects. Okay, so yes, they're not crazy. Please do not call mental patients crazy. Yeah.
Okay. Um, we go to the next slot. This is
Okay.
okay. For the game slot is thank you for siapa-siapa yang bagi respon dekat chatbox tu. Thank you bagi kerjasama, and next slot about the prevention and intervention and service of this mental health. Okay.
Right. Thank you, Daya. I'm so sorry. I think I babbled too long that I couldn't finish but it's okay. You can reach out to me if you want to know more about the myths and stigma. Right. Moving on to the next slot is treatments, prevention, and tips and services. So we are known of the definition. We are known of the symptoms, the causes, and now we're looking into how do we actually treat this. So, like I mentioned earlier just now, I believe in going through any treatment, okay, be it physical illnesses or mental illnesses, you need three things. Number one, you need the willingness to want to get help by the patient, himself or herself. Number two, you need to have uh, the right support from your other spouse, your family members, or your friends. And third, you need to have medical interventions, be it therapy, be it medications, or other medical interventions. So in treatments, all these three need to integrate and need to they're interrelated to each other. You cannot just thrive. You do not have proper support or medical interventions. They do not help either. Okay, so these three are important. Okay, first we're looking into the treatments. This again is not my expertise. None of this is my expertise actually, because I'm still a student. But I would love to share with you guys. So these are the treatments based on the American Psychological Association. Um, Treatments upon depression. Okay, so for medication, we're well aware that it's antidepressants for depressed patients. So medication, like I said, you cannot just cure depression without, like I said, it's an imbalanced chemical brain, right? Brain chemicals. So you cannot just say that, okay, I'm gonna get better, I'm gonna get better, but biologically, your little soldiers are not getting the help that they need. So you're not helping them either. So medications help. Okay, some people say psychiatric medications are scary. No, they actually put you in a better state. Okay, they balance out your hormones, they balance out basically your biological conditions are much more at equilibrium. Okay, and then there's psychotherapy, and then there's electroconvulsive therapy (ECT), and there's also self-help and coping. Okay, the psychotherapy and electroconvulsive therapy. I would love for you to further research on it because I am not an expert on it and I do not want to mislead information over here. So, but I would love to stress on self-help and coping. So, um, preparing on this talk, I seek help from my lecturers on what are the things that should be said and not. Earlier, I mentioned that to have a fulfilled and content life at the end of our lives, we need to have a positive social circle, right? So, but that doesn't mean that you need to have that you how to say that? Like you are is that word that you wajib dapat validation, public validation, and you need to live for other people. No, that's definitely not what it is. It is a positive social circle definitely helps to to get better in treatment, but it is not the only thing. Don't feel that I'm going to live for other people. I'm going to please other people because that's the way I'm going to be happy. You know, even though the research says that, but ultimately, how you deal with yourself is how your treatment is going to work. Because, like I mentioned just now, if you do not have the willingness to want to seek help, there is a possibility that your mental illness, any mental illness for that matter, will just remain unchanged. Okay, so this again looking into everyone else's threshold for pain, threshold for anything else. So when you when we're dealing with any mental illnesses, right, or any complications for that matter, there's a method of coping. So unless we understand our coping mechanisms well enough, we cannot identify what works for us. Because I believe every one of us, our coping mechanisms are different. You would say, a quote, say, what is that word? If you're stressed, you stress eating. You know, those kind of things. Basically, it's like you treat yourself, you cope yourself with sadness by eating. So that's individual. Okay, so I believe if you understand yourself well enough, you know how to cope. It definitely helps because coping for other people are different. Coping for what is for an introverted person is different than coping mechanism for extroverted person. So ultimately, all of us are different. So unless we really dive into what works best for us, we will be at we'll still remain at where we are. Okay. So yeah. Okay, now we move on to prevention tips. So ultimately, if you're looking into webinars, right? Ever since MCO commenced last year in March, there's all this surge talks about mental health, right? And now we realize why that happens is because of retrenchment, divorce rates also raised throughout since MCO last year. So all these things happened, and it leads to a very disruptive mental health condition. So ultimately, we want to have um, firsthand firsthand prevention. Once we know what we have as symptoms, we want to treat it right there and then. Similar goes to even nowadays. If you have flu, right, at this pandemic times, you want to get yourself checked because you're worried that you might have COVID, right? So similar to that, let's normalize to say that if we have even slight nervousness or slight stress, we can't get sleep, normalize to get help and to look into what exactly is happening in our body. Okay, so these are the prevention tips that I would love to share with you guys, and I hope we can accommodate and use it in our daily lives after this. So number one is exercise. So exercise, release toxins, and even if it's 5 minutes out in the sun, it definitely helps. I would like to share exercise is also natural antidepressant. Remember just now I mentioned that one of the medications for depression is antidepressants, right? So exercise is actually a natural form of antidepressants. So, and also I would like to share this research that was brought up by my lecturer, Dr. Ella. Her I think it was a relative who conducted a research that whereby a group of workers coming home, there's two different group, right? Sample subjects. So one group of subjects, they go back and forth from work, from their workplace to their home. So back and forth without stopping by the park, Taman. And on the other hand, this group of subjects, they go to the park. No, they go from their home to their workplace, back and forth. But deferring to that subject is that they go to the park. They stop by the park for a few minutes before they reach home or before they go to work. So, in comparison, ultimately at the end of the research, the finding was that those subjects going into the park, they drop by the park, have lesser amount of cortisol. So cortisol is actually a hormone secreted when you have stress. So basically, when you're stressed, if you look into your cheek, and you look under the microscope, there's a higher level of cortisol because it helps to compensate or deal with stress. So these people going into nature, going to the park, they have lesser amount of cortisol. So that indicates that being at one with nature definitely helps for you to be better as a whole. Okay, and then diet, like I mentioned just now, poor nutrition definitely contributes towards depression. So be mindful of our diet next time, and then sleep. Get enough sleep. If you're a child, get I think it was 10 hours a day for children, and for adults it's at least 6 to 8 hours of sleep. So if you find yourself having lack of sleep during the day, so please accommodate your schedule accordingly, and be mindful of your working schedule, and try to basically prioritize sleep above your work. Okay, and then alcohol and drug abuse. Please, for non-Muslims, do not take this lightly, because alcohol and drug use would contribute towards a weakened immune system, right? So that entails the contribution factor towards depression, remember? So yeah, always be mindful of that. Talking therapy. This is affirmations, talking with people, it definitely helps. So remember, do not isolate yourself. So if you find yourself feeling depressed or stressed, find somebody that you can talk to. Okay? And avoid common triggers. So avoid common triggers. I think in our daily life nowadays, we would associate it with I think social media in general. So if you find yourself having receiving a lot of backlash, posting something on social media, and then people coming at you for posting something, and that triggers you having a very unstable mental health condition. So do not provoke that. If that triggers you being sad and you being depressed or you being anxious, do not go anywhere this triggers. So surround yourself with positive people. Avoid drama. I would say avoid people who are constantly looking down upon you or do not give you encouragement. The world has enough critics with no credentials already. Okay, so we do not want these people to have more power upon us. Okay. Next, okay, this one is very interesting. Okay, these mental health services are what I found. There's multiple of mental health services out there, guys. I cannot stress this enough. There's a lot of it. I just cannot fit it in one slide because I just have one and a half hours. But one of them is Befrienders. Okay, so Befriender aims to benefit society by helping people who contact them to develop better emotional self-awareness, which in turn lead to improvement emotional health and well-being. So if you find yourself wanting to get help, wanting to talk to someone but you do not have people who are understanding, go to Befrienders, call them, they're available 24 hours. Visit their landline, you can screenshot this slide. You can even email them at the appeared email address. Okay, so these are the services that they provide. So phone calls for 24 hours, emailing, face to face. You can even text them and say that I want to meet you face to face. I can't deal with calls. I like to see your face, see your see your physical. What is that word? Basically your expression, okay, your emotion, your expression. So, and then if you wish to be a part of Befrienders, they also provide training for 6 months. So if you're interested, if you're very empathetic, you are very sociable, personable, you can look into their training program. They will train you for 6 months. And also Befrienders are, they associate themselves with outreach programs. So they do not only just go online, but they also go back and give it back to the community. So yeah. Next, I would love to touch into MMHA. Okay. Right. So MMHA promote mental health in the community to help raise the standard of treatment, prevention, and research in the field of mental health. To provide rehabilitative services for mentally ill people. Okay. So they're in full support for people who are mentally ill. You can give them a call from Monday to Saturday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can even email them. So this are the social therapies for individual, child therapy, couple, marital, family therapies, mental health first aid training. So this one, basically, they will train you to be those who are mentally ill, so that you need to have some sort of preparation, right, to treat someone. You need to have the proper knowledge, you need to have the proper exposure and experiences. So MMHA provides the ultimate training for that. So if you want to be a part of them, you can do so. They have psychological assessment as well, screening tests, and they give caregiver and peer support services. This is very important for those if you find yourself supporting mentally ill people, you yourself will feel drained. You will feel tired. You will feel exhausted because you know because it's not easy. It's not easy being there and supporting a mentally ill person. But MMHA would love to give the caregiver support so that MMHA supports the caregiver supports the mentally ill. So this is a very harmonious and very sweet ecology ecosystem. Yeah, very, very sweet. So next, we have the Mind Faculty. So the Mind Faculty is a private mental health clinic in Solaris, Mount Kiara, with over 20 practitioners offer a wide range of psychiatric, psychological counseling, and complementary therapies. So they're also available Monday to Friday at this stipulated time. And for more inquiries, do email them at the stated email address. And these are the services that they provide. Individual and child therapies, addiction therapies, in addition, couple marital therapy, also eating disorder clinic. So if you find yourself having to, I would say, suspect for eating disorder, do seek for the Mind Faculty's professional help. And there's also elderly mental health. Like I said, at the end of your time, when you're older, there is a possibility for you to not being satisfied in your life. So ada yang nyanyo, ada yang they would feel like aggressive most of the time. So if you care for your oppa, if you care for your ato, so do direct them to these services. Okay, and there's also corporate training. So if you are a member of an organization out there for a company, so do seek for the Mind Faculty. They are available to provide training for that. And okay, yeah. Okay, last but not least, we have the Humankind. So, okay, I think this is one of the most interesting mental health services that I have found. Okay, so what they are is basically they deliver evidence-based, sustainable solutions that ordinary people of good will can use to make a difference in the area of mental health, emotional well-being, and they use arts. Okay, the key is that they use arts as an approach because the arts are a powerful tool that process languages, cultural and social affairs. Okay, so if you seek further help, do call them from 12 p.m. to 12 p.m. This landline over here, it's called the Bear Buddy Helpline. It's similar to Befriended. They provide that service also. So you can call them up. You can even text them if you're shy, just call and talk to them. Okay, so these are a very interesting line of services that they provide. So number one is the Buddy Bear Helpline. The number is there. And then we have the Toy Project. So Toy Project, whereby they go to selected schools and they allow students to express themselves through art. They would draw, if you look into their website, they would have like people drawing on larger paper, very creative, very harmonious way of expressing. And then we have the Expressive STEM Work Project. The one also, they work with at-risk children, expressing art. And then the online, the one, they promote art therapy for adults and also children. And Brave Girls Project is a project which they help to support young girls in whatever it is that they're doing, whether it's pursuing a career or whether it's in education or anything. They would definitely they create such stable supporting environment for girls. So these are far more others. So mechanics, you can call them up if you need assistance. Cara website, you can check them out. Pretty cool as well. Talent Kasih, this is free. It is the government at that number, and then medcouch.com. So these are very one of a kind form of mental health services that they provide. So do check them out. They are very, I would say, they're very supportive towards the community for mental health patients. Okay, so I think that concludes my sharing session for today. So do reach us out to at @cycleucam on Instagram and on Facebook as well. I really hope by the end of this talk we're equipped with the right knowledge. And as a believer of science, please look into evidence-based and proper references and credentials, accredited people. Do not believe in hoaxes. Come on, we're adults and I would say we're definitely educated and matured and rational people. So do not believe in hoaxes. Go to the right sources for you to believe in any fake news. If you do not fall for that. I think that is all. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been an honor to share with you. I'm so sorry that I have a lot of things to share with little short time, but I'm glad I did it anyway. Thank you so much. Daya, back at you.
Okay, thank you, Cik Athirah. Okay, sekarang kita masuk Q&A session. Siapa yang ada soalan boleh tanya di chat box ataupun open your mic untuk tanya kepada Cik Athirah. Okay, kita go to the first question. Siapa yang tanya?
Hai Cik Athirah.
Hai.
Saya nak tanya,
Ya.
sebagai ahli keluarga atau kenalan kepada pesakit, bagaimanakah cara untuk kita mengenal pasti sama ada dia pesakit, pengidap bipolar disorder atau tidak, dan cara untuk menangani?
Okay. Thank you, Afrika. Thank you for your question. Okay, again, this is I'm not the best person to ask to answer this question, but I would love for Afrika further your research on DSM, because in DSM there is a list of characteristics on what you think bipolars are. So I think you have a snippet of the characteristics of bipolar disorder. So there's two bipolar disorders here, and one of the characteristics is a distinct period of normal and consistently So that is one of the, I think, one of the most basic characteristics listed in the DSM. And there's also I once talked to a bipolar disorder by a bipolar patient. Okay, interacted with her before. She's more talkative than usual. So that's a pretty interesting indication as well. At some point you find that person talkative, at some point they're not. So, and there's also excessive involvement in activities that have a high potential for painful consequences. Engaging in an unrestrained fight, speaking sexual indiscretions, you know what you call it? Retail treatment. I don't know what it's called, but if you're engaged in that in a very extensive state, then there's an indication. But then again, there's the long list of that. So I would love for you to further your research on bipolar disorder. Looking into the DSM-5, because there's a very distinct characteristics listed there, and whatever it is, please seek professional help for that. If you find someone who has those characteristics listed down, please seek professional help for them. And then, and also do screening. There's screening online. Ultimately, screening tests do not indicate that you are clinically diagnosed with any form of mental illness, but it is a good way of telling your general physician that, okay, I've done this screening online, and that the indication of the points are very severely inclined towards mental illness. So I would love to seek more for that. So that is a very good way to seek help from the general physicians. At least they know that they're doing your research, and at least you know what it is, instead of just blindly believing on things. Okay, so I hope I answered your question, Afika.
Okay, for the next question, saya kira tadi ada orang tanya tentang individual choice. Next, soalan ada orang tanya kat chatbox, adakah perubahan mood yang terjadi kepada seseorang merupakan tanda-tanda awal seseorang itu mengalami masalah mental atau sekadar gangguan kesihatan mental? Sebagai contoh, terkerap murung, tak lalu makan, dan kesihatan sistem badannya mula merosot, serta sukar untuk tidur waktu malam dan tidak dapat membuka perhatian ketika belajar pada keesokan harinya. Jadi perlukah seorang itu mendapatkan rawatan dengan lebih lanjut?
Okay, thank you so much for that question, It's very extensive. Very, very good question. This question relates to the symptoms that I mentioned earlier. So remember, some of the mental illnesses like ADHD and depression, they overlap in terms of symptoms, right? So, but it doesn't mean that when you have one of it, you have depression. That is ridiculous. It's a collection of all those symptoms. If you take in DSM, if you take 5 out of 9 symptoms, there's a huge possibility. So, for me, if you have identified your mindful, your own, if you think that yourself, you have all these symptoms, right? So you definitely need to write them down, and also take down on how extensive it is in terms of reaching. For example, you have been feeling depressed for a few weeks. So take a look on that, and even you can do it on your spouses or your family members as well. So if you find that they are they have been not feeling themselves lately. So please do not abruptly tell them, okay, you have depression. That is the first thing they do, is that you need to follow up with them. Like, persistent line, like now, like they have been quiet for like few weeks, and then they've not been eating well for 3 weeks. So all these things are accumulation of the symptoms. So yes, do get further treatments. You can actually go to your general physician, doctors. Doctors are general physicians, or you can go to your school counselors. If you're at school, go to school counselors, go to your medical pathologists, go to social workers, because they are the front line to detect any form of crisis, and they're professionally trained at that. So going to them, they will definitely direct you to the right services. So then again, your screen test, if you feel like you can pass this suspect, or suspected to have any mental illnesses, and definitely get further research. Definitely get further treatment. Yes. Yeah. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, next question from Shafika. And do human needs to know the level of mental health? If so, macam mana nak mereka nak tahu level of mental health?
Maksudnya the symptoms, is it? How do you label it? Okay. Again, apa pun DSM is DSM. Okay, DSM is ultimate manual, yes. But you cannot just and just diagnose people like, okay, you have eating disorder or you have depression. That is not the right way to do it. What you can do is you can take that as a reference to the person or yourself even. But at the same time, you are seeking professional help, because ultimately these people are trained years and years. They have acquired degrees for years and years, and they have gone into practices. And all this healthy shape for years and years, so they know they know things that we do. Okay, so ultimately DSM is DSM, and having them to direct you into all those labeling, we call it, is on them. They are the only ones accredited for clinical diagnosis. We do not. Even after my degree, I don't have the luxury to simply label anyone, unless you have clinical psychologist or a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist. You have the credentials to clinically diagnose someone. But until then, we have the right to be mindful of the symptoms we have been sharing since earlier. So yeah, be mindful of the symptoms and be treatment. Yes, that will answer your question.
Okay, ada kira tanya ni dari Teresa Sagaret. I'm curious on your strategy on how you handle people who are claim mental health is just a lack of religious knowledge. Tadi cakap you also bring
Okay, thank you for your question. Actually, while I was preparing for this talk, I mentored my lecturer. I was wondering how do I answer that question, because this is a very, I would say, a quite sensitive topic when it comes to religion. But this is what I have prepared. Let's go back to what mental illness is. Okay, so mental illness is not something that you can choose. You cannot choose the illnesses. Just like how you cannot choose broken bone illnesses, right? So having said that, like I said, treating someone, treatment goes hand in hand with three different domains that I mentioned earlier. You need to have a willingness of the patient to want to get help, and secondly, you need the right support, you need to have the right support, and third is that you need to have medical intervention. So religion is religion, in a sense where ultimately, if you're a believer in religion, any religion for that matter, praying is a thing that we do for courage. Prayers are things that we do because you eating, you're not susceptible to mental illness. That is so false. Okay, because it does not choose people. They do not choose being men. Obviously, that is not choose being men. So be mindful of that. Pray earnestly, whichever religion you are. Pray earnestly, but also treat the fundamentals. Get treatment, get your medications, go to therapy, seek for professional help. So yes, I hope I answered your question, Girish. Right.
Yes, yes, indeed. Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Okay, ada siapa lagi nak tanya soalan? Apa nak next is siapa ni? Okay, from Indonesia, Hidayah Mahmud. Self-reliance is important to take care of our mental health, and also is to have a coping mechanism. Would it be okay if our coping mechanism is to eat food in large quantity? What's the like eating the regulate our emotion, or do we need to get help from this form of coping mechanism?
Okay. Thank you, Nisha. This is a very, very interesting question. This goes back to the treatment. I mentioned that one of the treatments we can do is coping, right? Self-help and coping. So I also mentioned that coping is different for every one of us, right? We cope differently. Having said that, even if it's different, but you need to always trace back to what works well on paper. On paper meaning on research, on facts. Okay. If let's say you're coping with binge eating, right? Okay, so there's your method of coping, yes. However, when you look at numbers, when you look at the statistics, when you look at researches, binge eating and indulging in desserts or junk food in large quantity, they do not regulate your emotions, they do not help your little soldiers to work normally. They do not do that. They might put you at a very instantaneous effect like I'm so relieved, like oh I feel good and whatever, but ultimately in the long run that will in turn go back to your physical health that will then affect your physical health. So just how you were just treating your mental health, and now it's now focusing on physical health. So you do not want that. Okay, so that even though it's just binge eating is a way of you coping, but do it in a moderate level. I think everything must be done in moderation. Okay, so that is important. And I think I would like to list a few foods. I found this earlier. Where is it? Okay, so research suggests that